Welcome to another episode of God Yay or Nay. Today I'm here with my man, Dan Duvall. Dan, thanks for joining me, my man.
No problem, dude. I'm happy to be here.
Hey, I'm happy to be here. You're here as well. My podcast, as you know, because you started the Comedy Here Often podcast network. My podcast is a lot about self-transformation. I love to see how people change themselves for the better. And you have a story about addiction and recovery, which is probably one of the biggest transformations somebody could make. And now you're 3 years sober. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, man. I'm 3 years clean and sober from all drugs and alcohol as of 2 weeks ago.
Oh man, congrats.
21st was the day I decided to stop being a trash pile.
Trash pile. Well, hey man, and quitting right before Christmas, that must have been a huge step.
Yeah, this is a thing that actually comes up often when my sobriety date comes up. People are like, "Wow, how'd you quit around Christmas?" But the truth of the matter is that the end comes when the end comes, and it doesn't really matter what time of year it was. It was just the end of the line. It just needed to stop. So it didn't really. It was in order to quit, you really quit that stuff in a way. When you're at a place where I was at, you kind of have to you have to make a decision. It's not it's a diving off of the dock into the lake situation. It's not I tried for a bunch of years to stop on my own by trying to control how many days a week I drink, or maybe I'll only drink beer, not drink hard alcohol, no more shots. I tried creating schedules. I tried replacement therapy, all sorts of stuff, just trying it on my own, and none of it worked because I was never really fully committed, because I never really fully admitted that I had the issue that I had. I knew I had an issue, but I didn't know. Not that I didn't know, it's that I wasn't willing to admit that I had as large a problem as I did. So in that sense, I was kind of just putting one foot in the water. You know what I mean? I'm never fully committing to it. And so when I got to a place where I had there were no more lies for me to tell myself. When I finally hit that bottom, that last bottom, because you can believe me, you can hit rock bottom and find a fucking basement. Trust me, you can definitely hit it and then locate a shovel and then dig out some more of the dirt floor. You can find your way into the sewer pretty easily, and I did it a lot of times. The sub basement of the sewer, if you will. So,
oh damn.
Yeah, when I finally hit that place at that bottom, there was just nowhere else to go, and I finally asked for help in a significant way. So it didn't really Christmas. Yeah, it was Christmas and everything, but man, the desperation that was there at that time. I mean, I could have been at Mardi Gras, with an armful of beads. I still would have been. If I was at that level of desperation, it wouldn't have mattered, man. It was just time. And yeah, for sure. It probably doesn't make it easier. That's for sure. I feel like there's no good time to quit. Sure, you quit in January and it's but the Super Bowl is coming up. There's always something, you know what I mean?
There's always an event.
Hammered for Easter, bro. Come on.
It's Friday night's coming. What are you talking about?
It's fucking always somebody's birthday. It's always someone's birthday. Do you know what I mean? I used to joke about this when I used to drink. It's I used to joke about how I wish I could take a significant amount of time away from partying, but it's always someone's birthday. I used to make this joke all the time. It was so then you say that as you're ordering drinks. Well, might as well not. It's going to be someone's. You know what I mean? It's built in. It's built in. Your reasons to drink and party are built into your own narrative that you tell sorry, I should say. I don't want to say anyone else. That narrative is built into my own experience. That narrative of wanting to needing to drink. I'm lying to myself. I'm making up excuses. In me talking about quitting, I'm already building in a relapse. Do you know what I mean? I say the word relapse, but I know that's a recovery term and a term people talk about when they've. But I mean, if I think about it, it's more than a word that gets used for people who are in recovery, because I would quit. I'd swear off booze in the morning and then I'd relapse by 4 p.m. Do you know what I mean? Or by 8 the next night. So, I mean, if that's not a relapse, I don't know. If you're trying to stop, if I'm trying to stop drinking, and then I fail at it. To me, that's a relapse. It's like you don't have to be in rehab to relapse. You know what I mean? Which is a sick album name.
All right, man. Maybe actually let me and my audience know a little bit about yourself, and then we'll go a little bit deeper into your whole process of recovery. Tell them where you're from, what you're about, and all of that stuff. Maybe a little quick bio on you.
Sure. So I have kind of a bit of a fun story. I'm from Victoria, BC, and I probably in about 2009, I want to say, I was at a party, drunk as shit, and at the time I had been like I posted a lot of funny statuses on Facebook. Remember when it said "is" when you had to have "is" at the front of your status? Like a lot of those. Like I like to play with that a lot. And then this girl was talking to me at this party. Her name was Susan Colville. And we went to high school together. It was like a dumb high school party. And she was like, "You should start a Twitter." And I was like, "I'm not going to start Twitter. That's stupid. That's just for like." I thought at the time that Twitter was just like a thing where you're like, I'm getting groceries today. Tweet like that. I'm like, who gives a shit? No one cares. But I said no, I'm not going to do that. But then I fast forward a few months later. I was watching SportsCenter, and I decided I was going to start a Twitter account to follow hockey analysts to get an edge on my fantasy hockey leagues. Twitter was new; no one I knew had it. Really, it was not really anyone I knew had it or used it. So I signed up, and I was like, I'm going to get the edge. And, well, I quickly realized that like it was just a different thing than I thought it was, and people were using it to like write jokes on there, and I was like, oh, I can do this. This is fun, and I started writing jokes on Twitter, and the long and short of it is my account kind of blew up, and I ended up getting a ton of followers, and it turned into this whole thing, and I really started treating it like a job. Like I was writing like 5 to 10 jokes a day, and like drafting them, and really working on the exact wording of how I wanted them, and I really treated it like a 9 to 5. I took it really seriously. It was like, you might even say that I was addicted to it. I definitely treated it the same way that I might have treated drugs and alcohol. Like I put it before anything else. But it did pay off for me. It changed my whole life. So I ended up I was working at the time in a pharmacy at Shoppers Drug Mart. I was a pharmacy tech, and I ended up getting hired to do some. It all sort of panned out. Like I got brought on to write on a web series with this guy Mark Sayer, who's now my writing partner, and he is a movie producer, a film producer, and a director. He's done some great work. Point Defiance and Doe. He's got some really great films you should check out. But him and another comedian, Amber Tozer, they had this web series called Nitwits, and I'd never written anything before, and what they were doing was taking tweets and turning them into sketches, and they were really high quality and very, very good. The actual actors people heard of and stuff. And I know the first thing I ever wrote was based off this tweet that said, "For us, Christmas is when Dad drinks a bottle of wild turkey and cries while playing the acoustic guitar. We had Christmas twice last week." That was the first. I wrote that into a whole sketch, and Stacey Orstano from Friday Night Lights was in it. It was really cool, man. It was like the first thing I ever wrote, and I'm like, I didn't get paid for it or anything because it was a web series, and we were just trying to make a thing, right, together. But it was really cool, and it opened up this whole thing, and I ended up doing a couple more with them, and then I ended up writing for a couple of websites, just building up a portfolio, like for the Impersonals and JukeLeft.com, which is like the Onion, but for sports. And actually, the guy who was running JukeLeft is now the chief editor-in-chief at Clickhole.com. Steve Etheridge is a super funny guy. So he kind of gave me a break as well, so I was doing some work with him. And yeah, man, it was really cool. I started writing a bunch of stuff, and then I got hired to do some freelance copywriting for Wyden Kennedy in New York, and I started writing copy for commercials. I did one for Stride Gum and The Guardian and Carl's Jr., Heineken, Halls. One of my favorite things is they asked me when I was doing this Halls campaign. This is my weirdest flex. I really enjoy telling people this. They asked me to write out a whole list of like 2 pages of like just quick little one-line like words of encouragement. And so I sent them that, not knowing what it was for. And what it turns out is what they were for is if you open up a Halls on the wrapper, it has all these little words of encouragement. I wrote that.
Oh, are you kidding me?
It's like the dumbest, weirdest flex ever. I didn't even know I was writing them. Yeah.
It's the weirdest, like, fortune cookie.
Yeah. Like, you'll open it up and it'll be like, you can do it. And it's like, it's pretty fun. So that's a whole thing. And yeah, man, I ended up working in advertising. I worked for a couple agencies in Vancouver, a couple bigger agencies like Cassette, and as was one of them. They do awesome work. I worked with them for a while, and then I ended up getting asked to do like an animated short for a larger show on Cartoon Network Canada and Adult Swim called Night Sweats, made by two really funny guys in Vancouver, Bart Batchelor and Chris Nielsen. Actually, comedian Aaron Reed was on that show as well. He's a Vancouver guy. It was super funny. He had a segment called Art Corner. But I created, wrote, and directed an animated short called Giraffe Cops. That was part of it. It was an animated show. So I ended up doing that. But yeah, I think the biggest, I did that for a while. It was only 5 episodes, but it was a really cool experience, really awesome. I learned to like direct voice actors and all sorts of cool shit. So yeah, we did that. And then, I think the biggest thing though is I finally started to do stand up. And it was because I'd started that Twitter account and I just accidentally prepped for stand up for like 10 years. I wrote I think at the time I had like 12,000 jokes I'd written on Twitter. So when I finally decided to stop being such a coward and do stand-up comedy, I already had all these jokes written, so I could take them and be like, that would work, and expand them. So I already had a lot of the hardest part of doing stand-up. A lot of it is writing good jokes. It's one of the hardest parts, and I kind of already done that. So yeah, when I started doing it, I really enjoyed it. So I was trying to do all this stuff, but it was difficult because I could never really take full advantage of what I was doing. I was never fully present because I was so drunk all the time. I was drunk and I was using drugs and I was like just a mess of a person. Like I had so many awesome opportunities. Like I got asked to do a writing packet to be a staff writer on Late Night with Seth Meyers. I didn't get the job. I might have got it if I was really new. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I also was just like in such a place where image was so important to me at that time. I was so firmly in active addiction that being perceived as like a cool guy because of these opportunities was so much more important to me than actually doing the thing. That I got asked to do the packet and then I spent a week drinking and telling people about it before I actually even did the thing. And so, looking back, it's like that's largely what my life was like. And it was driven from such a place of fear, of being like afraid of what other people, putting my value on what other people thought about me and I didn't do anything because I wanted to do it. You know what I mean? Like I was good at writing jokes and I was good at comedy and stuff, but I was doing it for all the wrong reasons. I was doing it to gain, value from other people rather than because, hey, I love this thing. So yeah, man, and it went on. There were other things too. Like I with a filmmaker in Vancouver, Laurie McGinnis, we made a documentary called Funny Tweets that is now on Crave. And I fumbled my way through that too. Like I didn't really know what I was doing, and I was never fully present. And it's kind of cool because we ended up getting like some really awesome people to be in the movie. We had like Andy Richter agreed to do it, who's the kindest, nicest man. It was so awesome that he let us do that. And Alex Sulkin from Family Guy and Matt Selman from The Simpsons, Danny Zucker from Modern Family all did the film, and it was really awesome meeting them, and it was really cool. And I've stayed in contact with a lot of those people. But again, at the time, like I watched that documentary now. It's hard for me to watch. And first of all, I'm like 70 pounds bigger than I am right now. And I'm like literally intoxicated in my interviews. So it's difficult for me to watch.
Wow.
I know we made this really cool thing and I have these moments and it's not like a wash or anything by any means, but I definitely was not as present for it as I would have liked to have been. You know what I mean? Like I'm just so much more present for my own life now. So I guess that's a little bit of my background, but or a lot of bit of my background. but everything changed about. So I've been working in comedy in one form or another for about, I guess, 10 years, but it's really only become focused and where it is now because of my sobriety and like the changes I've made, and mostly I equate that to like being present for my own life and having my motives in check and doing things because I want to do them. So yeah.
I love how you say that being present as well, because yeah, that's I think something that's so huge in like any of these kind of things. Like I know with me, like I used to kind of like drink a lot too with comedy shows as well, and I think I was doing it for more of like a fear thing. Like I always got like very anxious before going on stage, so I just kind of learned to like numb that with alcohol. And you're right, it takes away from your presence, and it also takes away from you really enjoying the experience of like what you're doing, because like isn't that what we're supposed to be doing?
Yes.
Like we're comedian, you know, like we're making something that's funny, so like you should be there and enjoying it and being as present as possible. And alcohol takes it away. It may numb the pain. It may sometimes, because it numbs the pain, you might like sometimes even think like, oh, this makes me funnier. When like it's just a complete illusion. Like when you can learn to be present and like be there with the audience, you're a much better comedian and you're a much better artist or creator, totally. Right?
Well, here's the. I mean, what we hear a lot in recovery is the opposite of addiction is connection. Because when you're in active addiction, and I mean when I say active addiction, I mean we should get into this too, but I mean not so much being high or drunk. I mean like the mental illness side of the obsession of like, I think that's what a lot of people don't understand, is that addiction is it's an obsessive compulsive disorder. Is the best way I can describe it. But the opposite, so you're never really like when you're like in that active addiction, when you're in that obsession, and I'm sure anybody can relate to this too, because to me, I believe that addiction is like largely the human condition, but like under a microscope. Like it's, I do think anybody can relate. I think what non-addicts might not understand is that it's like, yeah, we're feeling the same things, but for me, it's like it's like at a higher vibration, you know, like that obsession is like, we don't have that piece to like break that obsession. We're not born with that, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So when I'm in that obsessive state, whether it be about, you know, like, drugs or alcohol or like trust issues or like any little thing that my brain can catch on to and be obsessed about, there's no connection. I'm not connected with anybody. I'm completely isolated because I'm alone in my head with this nonstop narrative that I can't break away from. So it's the loneliest place. Like, I can't imagine. Like something pops into my head and then I start obsessing about it. I can't stop. So therefore, that is coming before any relationships I have with any other people around. So I'm completely isolated in that thing. And so therefore, the opposite of addiction is connection. Because if I'm connected to others, I'm not trapped in my own thoughts and I'm connected to others. So that to me translates into stand-up in that, like, I really find the difference between like an amateur and like a professional comedian, like, you know, like an open mic, brand new person who's just trying and is very in their head and like trying to deliver the jokes, you know, when you're new. And somebody who's comfortable and seasoned is that connection with the audience. You're not just delivering jokes to people. You're actually making a connection and performing, and you're like, you know, you're connected. You're in the moment with the audience. You're able to like pop out of a joke and pop back into a joke because you remember what you're talking about, because you're just having fun and you're not thinking about the next thing that you're going to say. You're just there in the moment, present, connected, and like that's always when I have my best sets, when I'm in that flow state, and that can't happen. It cannot happen if I'm not connected. And so if I'm drinking and on stage. If I'm drinking, I'm not connected to people. I don't believe that you can be connected on that level while you're intoxicated. I don't think anyone can. I think you might think you are, but it's not the same thing. And so if I'm drinking, I lose that connection with the audience, and now I'm just delivering jokes, and it might go fine, and it might appear fine to the audience. Like I'll have I've had people say to me, "Oh, your set was great," and I'm like, "No, it wasn't. It was terrible." They're like, "Well, you did good." And it's like, "Yeah, but I wasn't present. It wasn't fun. Like I wasn't having fun." Do you know what I mean? So like for me, it's not a good set unless I'm having fun, even if it goes well. Like I still want to be having it.
And that's actually a great point because like you can people like can be like under a horrible addiction, but they seem fine on the outside, right? And like they may seem to be doing their work or whatever their thing is like very, very well, but you're right, they're not connected, and like so they're not getting that fulfillment from whatever they're doing, which in turn over time that's gonna like weigh down on a person, and it's gonna come to a point where they're gonna crack or something's gonna happen, and and that's where you like hopefully at that point they can come into a more of a recovery phase, but you never know, like it can go down the other route as well, right?
And the fulfillment word is a good word right there, because that comes back to the motives of why I'm doing stand-up, or why I'm podcasting, or why I'm doing any of those things. It's like I'm never going to be fulfilled if I'm doing it for any other reason that I love it. It's nice to get paid also, you know what I mean? But I feel like if I start out doing it because I love it, and just because I want to make something good, like this is like what we talk about with the podcast network, with which is what we're doing now. The Comedy Here Often Podcast Network is I've been hired as the director. We've been, myself and Alexi Johnson, who works here, and Jonathan Simkin have been building that up from the ground, and and Kevy as well. So that, I mean, we didn't come into that being like, well, here's this thing, we're starting out, we all are rich now. You know what I mean? Like, yes, it's nice to make money, but we have to know that we're doing it because it's like a bigger, cooler, awesome thing that doesn't exist in Canada as this comedy podcast network doesn't really exist. So we want to do it because, hey, this is a good idea. Let's make cool shit. But I mean, it's kind of like if we go in there and be like, hey, let's go make money. The motive isn't there to like you lose you lose the piece where you're wanting to make it good for the right reasons. If I want to make something good for the right reasons, the money will come as part of it. It's like kind of hard to explain.
Well, it's kind of like how you were saying before, when you had those opportunities, like with the Seth Meyers show, like you would what you would rather do is like almost go and get drunk and tell your friends like, hey, look at this, but then actually sit down and do the thing. Like you're getting more. What you're like trying to doing is for superficial, like, hey, look at what I got, and like rather than like sit down and actually get the good fulfillment from actually doing it and like loving what you're doing.
Exactly.
Right?
Like I'm getting that instant gratification of telling people how cool I am, but I'm not getting like the longevity of like, the feeling of having arrived in my own skin in a career that I love and want. It's like, but I never experienced that. I never experienced that feeling of deserved reward, because everything I did was sort of manipulated and schemed. Like everything I did was manipulated and schemed. Because I always felt like I needed to trick my way into good things. You know what I mean? And largely that comes from a place of just not feeling like I'm not enough. I don't deserve enough. I don't have that piece of like self-worth, which is another thing that's very common in addicts and alcoholics. And we talk about that a lot. It's like it starts when I'm a little kid. It starts way before I ever pick up a drink. It starts when I'm a little kid, and for whatever reason, I'm just born that way. Like I think there's everybody has trauma, and the trauma happens along the way. But as far back as I can remember, I never really had like a sense of self. It was like this desperate need to pull from the outside to give myself value, even as a little guy. I always felt, and like I think that we see what we reflect. So I think that if I don't see that I have self-worth, then I can't see why someone else would think I have self-worth. So I feel like I need to trick people into liking me. You know what I mean? So then that leads this this like really sad little kid, man, who like needs to be presenting all the time, like needs to be like manipulating and lying to like get people, like, you know, exaggerating. It's like I'm giving you a resume of like my credentials in order for you to be my friend and like love me. And that's how the addiction starts, right? And then, you know, you start doing that at a young age. 30 years later, you're a master at it. It's so built into you. That's just who you are as a person. And you're not a person. Like I'm just getting to know myself in the last few years. Like I feel like I just was always trying to be whoever I was around me thought I should be, but like through my own eyes. Like I'm arbitrarily deciding what I think those people think I should be and then trying to be that rather than just being myself, which is so crazy, dude. Like it's such an insane way to live. But like if you're ever wondering what addiction looks like and like alcoholism, like what it looks like without the booze, before the booze, that's what it looks like. You know, and then when you find that booze and the drugs and the partying, it's like, holy shit, that's my personality. I'm the guy who's fun. I'm the guy who's partying. I'm the funny dude who makes everybody laugh. Like, you know what I mean? Like it just all fits perfectly into that situation. That's why people who, you know, when they say it's hereditary, it's not like I'm not born addicted to drugs and alcohol. It's just that I have this precondition, whereas when I do arrive at that place with the drugs and alcohol, I don't have a fucking chance because it all just fits perfectly into that narrative of like, I don't know who I am. I need something to be my personality. It's like party guy. It's so common across alcoholics and addicts. That to me is what addiction looks like. Yeah, and I don't have those issues nearly as much today. Like it's just not. I don't operate like that anymore. I'm getting to know who I am, and I'm getting more comfortable with like, you know, having serious conversations and like setting boundaries for myself and just like being just being comfortable in my own skin.
Hey man, no, that's pretty impressive. Have you ever read the book Lost Connections? Yeah, you should check that book out because it's basically it's about addiction for the most part, and it like you were saying, like addiction and the opposite is connection. It basically goes down that route, and it like talks about different being present, a connection to the present moment, a connection to yourself, a connection with other people. Like these are the connections that we're losing, and almost as a society, and that's why it leads people to more addictive behavior. And like you were saying, like how you kind of have like you never really had that connection to your like actual self, like when you lose that connection. And honestly, the one thing especially when we look at social media, it's kind of like that's kind of like an exaggerated form of this kind of like people like are trying to put like a fake self out there all the time, and they kind of lose connection with like who they really are, and like they always present themselves into the world as a kind of a fake self. Like that could be very detrimental to a person's well-being over time because you really lose like who the hell you are, like who you really are. Like when you lose that connection, that can be devastating.
Yeah, man, and it's social media is like a huge issue for me, and I think a lot of people are addicts. Like I feel like you can be an alcoholic without drinking. It's not like anytime I'm like obsessed with like putting something ahead of my own well-being, my own like anything that I'm missing my own life for because I can't help it. Like I don't want to, but like I'm doing it anyway. I am way better than I used to be, but like tweets, I would like tweet something and then just be constantly checking it to see how many likes I got, and like I still do it, but not like before. Like I used to check it nonstop. Like I couldn't even have conversations with people. I'm not like present at all. I'm not around. I'm just staring at this thing all day and just thinking about it all day. And you know, I see it in a lot of people for sure. When you're talking to somebody and their phone just like slowly comes up in front of their face and they're just like scrolling. And I still do it sometimes. It still happens. I mean, it's really our brains. I don't think are like shouldn't be interacting with this thing that we're interacting with on the level that we are. It's really scary, dude. You know, I think a lot of people are doing their best, but I do think a lot of people are aware of it. And I know that I do better when I take breaks from my phone. Like, but it's very much so. And I think the biggest addiction to me that is not drugs and alcohol that people are addicted to that we don't even think about is codependency. I think in like relationships and things like that, and I think that's like the biggest one because it's also, I mean, how many friends do you have, and how many times have you probably met somebody and gone to like, as I call it, girlfriend island, where you just like lose contact with all your friends and all that matters is that other person, and like you lose yourself in that. And I still have issues with that. Like, you know, I'll admit it. I think that everybody does, and I have to make sure I'm checking in with myself and making sure that I'm like, you know, like staying on top of my stuff and worrying about my own things. I can get really obsessive, man. It's really difficult. Like just living life as an addict and like having that fucking monster that lives inside of you that obsesses and compulses. Compulses is that word?
I get what you're saying.
You know, it's like it lives in there and it can attach onto anything, and it's really sometimes I fucking exhaust myself, but it's constantly having to check back in. Biggest thing for me is just check those motives. Why are you thinking the things you're thinking? What are you saying? How is it helpful? Is it useful? Is it truthful? You know, what, like, because my own brain can be my enemy, and I can trick myself into like getting myself into big trouble in lots of different ways. And so, I don't know. I definitely can get lost in other people. I can get lost in anything, man. Food. I can go down into like dark spirals with like, I live right near Victoria here, like a really good burger place, like good pizza place, and an awesome barbecue joint. And I can just go into like these cycles where I'm just eating at those three places over and over again, and I stop going to the gym, and then I'm just like, it's dark. And then I realize I'm like, oh my God, like I'm anxious all the time, I'm sad all the time, it's not good. And it's because I'm not present. It's because I'm using those things as an escape, and I can do that in relationships too. And I can be like, man, I'm fucking anxious. Oh, it's because I'm obsessing over this other person and what they're doing. It's like, fucking let that person live their life and just go live yours. But like, you know, I gotta live. I gotta like. This is the spiritual side of things for me. That is such a huge part of my recovery is the spiritual side of like. I use the word God. I do use the word God, and I'm not a religious person by any means. The only time I go to church is when I'm going to 12-step meetings, and it's usually in the basement. I'm not a religious person, but I do believe in a power greater than myself, and I don't mean that in a way of like I think that there's like something looking out for me and pulling the strings and putting things in front of me. Or I don't see it like that. I just see it as a power greater than myself, and that power is whatever this is, this existential existence we have. So this space between me and you, this like the fact that I'm a meat sack filled with bones and I don't make sense. Do you know what I mean? It's like that whole thing. So how can I possibly control the weather? What other people do? What like people, places, and things? It's people, places, and things, and I need to try not to control those things. And what I need to do is constantly, every day, and I mean every single day, because it only takes a second for this shit to get away from me, is to like just be constantly sorting what is mine to control and what is not. And so as long as the better a job, I'm never going to be perfect, but progress, not perfection. But it's like, you know, whatever I can, whenever I'm closer, the closer I am to controlling what I can control, which is my responsibility, which is my emotions, my feelings, you know, my tasks that I need to get done in a day. Those are the only things I really need to control. I don't need to control another person. I don't need to control this restaurant that's closing at 8 o'clock tonight, and I'm mad now because I can't go. Like, it's not, those things are, I just have to let all those things go. And it takes so much practice and patience, and like, it's just such an ongoing thing. But like, that is my purpose in life, is to like sort through those things. And the more I can focus on what I can control and let go of the rest, and, you know, turn that over to God, as I say, the better off I am, and the easier my life is. And I'm not carrying around all this other shit. And it makes it so I don't have to scheme and scam and like manipulate, because I'm just like looking after whatever I need to, because I don't need to lie to myself to look after my shit, right? I just do it. Mm-hmm. So, easy, you know, some days are good, some days are bad. It's an ongoing thing, you know,
and I like that. You have to figure out what you can control. This is like, I love it because it's like a very stoic philosophy. It's a very Eastern philosophy as well. And it's something like like when you're meditating and kind of understanding like who you are, what you have control over, and once you understand the shit that you don't have control over, and like you have to, it's like you said, it takes a long time, but when you can kind of train your mind to understand like, hey, you do not have control over this shit, so stop responding to it so harshly, or giving that anxiety or whatever it is that like pops up. When you can actually train your mind to do that, it gives you so much more peace. And it allows you also to understand what you can control. You can control your behaviors. You can control your actions. Like, and when you can bring yourself back to that and like that understanding, it brings a lot more peace into your life, right?
And, like, it's up to me to control how I react to my emotions, which are largely, my mind is a mind of its own, I like to say. And but it gets easier. It gets easier, and like it's cool that like talked about this like in a meeting last night, a 12-step meeting, and I talked about this, and it was about choices, about like how I have a choice now. I didn't have a choice before. Before I like got sober and started actually working on myself and looking at myself, my emotions controlled me. So like if I had a feeling, I'm like I had to act on it immediately, because every feeling is going to kill me. You know what I mean? And now I have a choice where I can stop and be like, I don't have to react to that right away. I don't have to. I can think about not think about what I'm going to say so much, but think about like what the truth is in the actual situation, as opposed to like what story my brain is telling me. And like if I wait long enough without reacting, the truth will come out. Or if I call somebody else and be like, hey, this is what's happening for me, can I get another perspective on it? Especially is amazing. Like, oh my God. That's such a huge part of how I got sober and stayed sober, is connecting with others. And whenever I'm feeling crazy, whenever I'm feeling anxious, whenever I'm feeling just off, to just call somebody and be like, hey, this is what's going on for me. And then listening to that other person's perspective, and instead of just being like, I know, but you don't understand, but this and this. It's like, no, just listening to the other perspective, and understanding that understanding that my perspective can be wrong. I was completely incapable of changing my perspective on something before, and now I'm fucking good at it, quite good at it. Like I can change things right away, and then have it, and then have it not be an issue. Like I really can just see. It's such a fucking gift. I can't even tell you, because it was not like that before. Like my life was not like that. I was a fucking mess, man. I was a wrecking ball of chaos. Like I just wherever my emotions are taking me, that's where I'm fucking going. And whatever I have to say, scheme, passive aggressively bring up, like that's where we're going. And you're all coming on the fucking ride with me, and it's gonna suck. Buckle up, motherfucker, like,
And like how you were saying, like you couldn't like listen to somebody and actually like get their information they're telling you, because in your head, like because I've done this too, like in your head you're like, no, I'm right, like I know what's right, but you can't like shut up and listen to somebody. And that's kind of brings you back to that connection thing, right? Like if you're going to connect with somebody, you have to actually listen to them and like take in what they're listening to, right? Or what they're telling you. Like you have to take it in and like actually be able to weigh what they're telling you, and like saying like, is this true or not? And like the ability to change your perspective and be like, hey, maybe what this person's telling me actually has some weight to it. Like to be able to change your perspective, that takes practice. And like you said, that's a gift. When you can learn to do that, like how much change that can bring into your life, because now you understand that you don't know fucking anything. Like none of us really know that much. Like we should be able to take in different ideas, different things from different people, and be able to like change your perspective as life goes on, right?
Yeah, man. It comes from this place of like empathy, of trying to understand, like just stopping and getting outside of myself and understanding where that other person is coming from and what their experience is and why they might think like they do and why they're having the feelings that they do. And if I can understand them, then I can change my perspective. I just have to be able to understand, and so it might take me more than one try, and like But yeah, it really helps, man. It really helps to be able to slow down and not be so fucking reactive. And I definitely owe that to 12-step programs for sure. So it's cool to like be able to understand. You know, the thing about the thing about feelings. I had this a person said this to me once, and I just found it to be super profound. She said, "You know, it's not that I feel like I have to be happy all the time. It's that I feel like I have to be in control of my feelings. So, like, my brain works in this way where it just has, if there's anything outside of myself that changes the way that I feel, I'll lean into it that way. Like, if something is bad, like, if I'm feeling bad, like, just not terrible, but, like, not good, like, if I'm sad or something, or, like, or something that somebody has said isn't sitting right with whatever my narrative is, I will, like, make it worse because I'm not in control of it kind of being, you know, not good, but I can be in control of it if I fucking burn it to the ground. So, you know, like, you know, so yeah, if something's bad, I'll make it worse. And so my brain will just start pulling out other bits of weird evidence that it gathers and whatever else and pile into this narrative so that it all fits. And I think largely that comes from fear and like trying to make things on the outside match the way that I feel on the inside, you know? And so, well, if this thing is sad, then everyone must be out to get me because it's not my fault. You know, I'm not responsible for my own feelings. Like it's really, really insane, like learning all these different defense mechanisms and like survival tactics my brain has, like, you know, like something, and it goes both ways too. Like, I'm happy. I got offered to write a packet for Seth Meyers. I should go out and get fucked up for 3 days to celebrate it because, you know, I'm feeling good, but wouldn't it be better if I felt great? You know, it's like the same thing. And it's wild. And all this stuff is really cool because it's so new to me. Like, I look at myself, I've only been sober for 3 years. I've only thought about any of this stuff for like 3 years. So I'm really excited to see where it goes as I keep going and keep working on this stuff and keep doing keep doing 12 steps and just, you know, continuing to learn all these lessons. And because the transformation has been vast. I truly operate like a different, like I'm me, you know, I've, it feels good, man. Like, it feels good to like know that I'm capable of all this stuff and even looking at it. And it's just so early on, so far to go. I can't wait to see what more I learn. But yeah, I don't know. I can't do any of that stuff if I'm drinking. If I'm drinking, I don't deal with any of this stuff because at some point I'm going to, you know, I'm either going to be hungover or I'm going to be going out to get drunk or I'll be drunk or like, I just can't. They don't go together. I can't. And I love this life so much more than what I had before. Like, it's just not close. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
That's awesome, dude. Yeah, man. I'm fucking proud of you, buddy. That's such a, like, it's a huge achievement, man. And yeah, like you said, that, and I like you, like what you're talking about is such a stoic philosophy and meditation philosophy, and it's like understanding that like the real suffering that happens is not coming from the external world. What it's coming from is your reaction to the external world, and like it's really. It takes practice to get that understanding that, like, you know, like, rather when something like an anger or like a sadness pops up into you, like, you can react to that, your mind can react to it and make it so much worse. But when you learn like meditative qualities of just like being able to accept it and be like, hey, I'm actually having some anger arise in me right now, and like I can accept that and just observe that anger, you can actually learn to deal with this stuff a lot better and a lot more in a more healthier ways, and that brings so much more peace in your life. And yeah, and I love how you're doing this. So at this point of the podcast, I usually ask the question, God, yay or nay, but I think you kind of gave a little bit of an answer to that. Do you want to expand?
Yeah, sure. I find that it's like, I don't see how anybody can deny that there's something greater than ourselves in that I mean, if you break it down, nothing makes sense. None of this makes sense. Like, what even are we? Where are we going? When did this start? Is time even linear? Like, none of this is like it doesn't. We have all these things that we figured out through science or whatever else, but like, I mean, yeah, I don't know, man. My whole thing is not knowing and being okay with it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not, like, just not knowing what happens to me after I die, or like what space is, or how we got here, or any of that stuff, and just trying to get lost in the wonderment of it, and just like, I think in staying in that thinking, it helps with finding beauty in the world, no matter what you're looking at. Even like a man-made thing, you can be like, wow, we made this. This is incredible. And like every single component of every man-made thing is incredible. Like it's all just incredible. Like, I'm just happy to be here. Like, it gets me into this place of gratitude where I'm like, I am just happy to live in God, in this experiment, in whatever you want to fucking call it. I decided to start calling it God because I felt like I was holding back by not saying that. I felt like I was kind of bullshitting myself. Like, I needed to get over myself. So I started saying the word God just to be like, you know what, dude? Just, it's okay. It's okay to use that word. It means many different things to many different people, and like, it's really helped a lot with like letting go and being less worried about people judging me. Like, I don't really give a shit if you have a problem with me saying God or not. Like, it's like, I don't feel like I need to make excuses for myself in that way anymore, which is cool. And so the more I can stay grateful for being here, the better. I have this mantra I say when I do meditations. I also do prayer as well. But I have this thing that I like to say as part of my prayer, where I will say to myself, life is a series of fleeting moments, and the trick is to find beauty in the fragility of the experience. And so, nice. You know, if I can look at the fact that like I could go at any second, the odds of me being here are so impossible, and like, you know, no matter what is happening to me, no matter how good, no matter how bad, no matter what, I still got to be here and experience whatever this is, and I can be grateful for that. And even when I'm gone, I still got to have it, and I don't necessarily have to remember it or anything else. I can just appreciate it right now, right here in the moment. And like, you know, it's fucking hard to get to that place because our brains are so powerful and want to fucking not be in that place because that place is scary. You know, that's where the fear all comes from, that place of like, I don't know what's going to happen to me when I die, blah, blah, blah. It's like the survival mechanisms start there, and they build out of these, you know, colossal distraction planes of distraction. You know, there's so many levels to them, but when I boil it down to that place of just being like, hey, I get to experience this, I got to see this is beautiful, then nothing can touch me. Have you ever, I got a book recommendation for you, you know, I already read this, but have you read Mankind's Search for Meaning? I think that's what it's called, by Viktor Frankl.
That's that's on my reading list, so I have
it's
not
yet. It's a doozy. If you can find meaning while living in Auschwitz, you can find meaning anywhere. So go ahead and read that. Mm-hmm. That book is a big deal for me. So I think about that a lot, about what people went through in the concentration camps, and how, like, you know, how not you have it good here, but it's just like people in there can find meaning, and just like even just looking around and being like, it's beautiful that I got to experience this. That's like, means a lot to me. The way that I've that I have recovered is through this spiritual realm of gratitude, and like trying to become self-aware, and looking at the root of all these problems, of like looking at the fears and resentments and all that stuff that's built up from those years of not knowing who I am. Like, that is how I've quit drinking, is by you know, understanding that the alcohol and the drugs are like, that I'm powerless over. I'm powerless over those things. I can't have one, because one is too many and 1,000 is never enough. So I can't have one, because if I have one, I go into that place of like full escape, and I'm escaping from my own life. And so instead of trying to escape from my own life, I'm trying to build a life I don't feel like I need to escape from. So that it becomes the motive in that, when things get so desperate that I'm like, hey, I need help, and I reach out, ask for help, and I start going to meetings and shit, and you know, that's that's how I got pulled out, by admitting that I'm powerless. I think an important thing when dealing with others is to remember that people are not inherently bad. People are not out to get us. We're not out to get one another. Everybody is acting on these fear, survival planes, whatever they may be. And so, we're going to get defensive, and we're going to try to we're afraid that people are trying to take stuff from us, or trying to it's like, it's if you pull it back far enough, it's like the fear of death, and so everyone's just trying to survive. And so I think if we can look at each other compassionately with that lens, life gets a lot easier for everybody. So, I think it's good to try to understand that people's motives are they're just doing their best and trying to fucking manage their own feelings, which is so fucking difficult. So,
yeah. So when you if somebody's dealing with this kind of problems right now, your advice is kind of ask for help, or what's your advice for that?
Ask for help. If you are suffering from drugs, from addiction to drugs and alcohol, and you're trying to manage it yourself, I think often people don't realize what being an alcoholic means, or an addict, a drug addict means. I think that they think that they're not one unless they're living on the street, or using every day, but that's not the case. It's about unmanageability. It's about, are you putting those drugs and those alcohol in front of work, or your family, or your own well-being? Are you not able to is your life unmanageable? If your life is unmanageable and you're drinking a lot, I mean, there's probably a good chance that you might have an issue. And rather than trying to control it on yourself, it's really easy to just reach out, someone like me. I'm listening. Anybody who is in a 12-step program wants to fucking hear from you. We want to help. Helping you helps me. We have a saying in recovery that is, I only get to keep what I have by giving it away. Meaning somebody was there when I asked for help, so I need to be there when someone else asks for help. And when I'm talking to somebody who's brand new, and it takes me back to where I was when I was brand new, and I get to relive that and start over again. It's like a little refresher. That's a really cool thing about recovery, is that you get to stop whenever you want. You can stop drinking and doing drugs. You don't have to drink today. You don't have to use drugs today. You can reach out, and you just don't have to do it today. That's why they say one day at a time. It's it's not, hey, I can't do drugs anymore. It's, I don't have to, right? I'm free from them. It's a fucking prison. And I just think people don't understand what a problem looks like. And there's no shame in just asking somebody for help. There's no shame in just asking, hey, do you think I might have a problem? You don't even have to commit to anything. It's okay just to ask. Just because you ask doesn't mean that it's over for you and you no longer can drink. It's okay to just check in and be like, hey, what do you think? And that's the cool thing about these recovery programs too, is that there's no pressure. There was never anyone who told me I had to do a certain thing or do this or do that. I did it because I wanted to stop. And it's just so difficult to do on your own. You're just so isolated, and your brain is so powerful, and it will convince me. If I do it on my own, my brain will eventually convince me to drink. Yeah, that's my biggest thing. Just don't do it. Whatever it looks like, just tell people. Tell people around you that you have a problem. I guarantee you will be judged less than you think you will be.
Thanks so much, buddy. That's honestly, that's really helpful for people. And this was I love this conversation. This is something I really do appreciate, and that transforming yourself, and this transformation that you've had, it's amazing to hear about. And I hope people I know people are going to take a lot of value from this conversation. All right, buddy, tell people where they can find you on Twitter. Tell people about the Comedy Here Often podcast network, and your podcast you do with your sister.
Okay. You can find me on the internet at drunkenhighguy69 at twitter.com. Obviously, just kidding about that. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at LazerDuve, LAZERDOOV. I spelled laser wrong by accident. It's a fun fact about my online persona. Our podcast is called The Hate Locker. It's a podcast with my sister and I. We talk about things, the everyday trivial stuff that everybody loves to hate with passionate yet fair vigor. We just cracked the top 100 comedy podcasts in Canada. It's really great. We have some really exciting guests coming up. We have American comedian and comedy writer Rob Fee is recording with us this week. We have Jonathan Torrens coming on, and we have I think with Graham Clark coming up too. So yeah, lots of fun stuff. Oh, we've also got Samantha Ronson is coming on the podcast in the next month. DJ Samantha Ronson. That's kind of random and fun.
Sweet.
So yeah, man, it's great, and we're all part of the same podcast network you're a part of, the Comedy Here Often podcast, which is Canada's biggest comedy podcast network. We currently have 15 podcasts on. You can check it out on our website, comedyhereoften.com. You can listen to all our pods. One I really like right now that I've been shouting out a lot is So You Ruined the Party Again with Randy Newmeyer and Bobby Werner, where they just talk with comedians about times that people ruined a party. It's really fun. Their banter, their back and forth is great. Their chemistry is awesome. They're super good.
Nice.
Yeah. And of course, our flagship podcast with Kevin and Alexi is great as well.
Yeah, buddy. Thanks so much for doing this, Dan.
It has been my pleasure.
All right, that was this week's episode. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. I appreciate it. Please subscribe to the podcast. Give it a good rating. It really does help. And also check me out on social media. On Instagram and Twitter, it's @NewerKidY. On Facebook, it's NewerKidY Comedian. I'm constantly putting updates about the podcast when new ones come out. I put up podcast clips. And I also put up comedy stuff, comedy dates, comedy clips, and different stuff like that. So you can come check out, have a laugh, and keep up to date on the podcast. Until next time, this is another episode of God Yay or Nay.